So when you have someone come to you and they're a brand, they're an entrepreneur, and they're saying, "I'm trying to develop kind of my storytelling, or I'm trying to even know what should I do." I think that's something we hear. I think of that as an entrepreneur myself. Like, how do we not just be totally salesy on one side and just constantly pitching our product, but then at the same time have a voice? Like, what are some of the things that you would recommend? Someone saying, "Hey, I have this product or group of products that are selling well. I need to do better at my organic social media." What are some of the kind of top recommendations you would say?
I mean, the place that we always start is research, is go out there, study, first understand the platform that you want to be successful on and study the very specific formats that are doing well in those formats. But don't just pay attention to people that are using that format successfully. Look at the people that are using that format unsuccessfully. Because a big, a f- now I can talk about a few big mistakes that people make. Is one big mistake is people get caught up in these trends, or they see somebody like Alex and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna do that format." And either even if they have success, a lot of people don't, they just jump to another trend. And they say, "Oh, I see this other person doing this other thing." And they keep jumping around to all of these different formats, and they don't even look at the world in a format. They almost kind of think of it as a trend and think they need to be constantly evolving and changing the and jumping. And if you look at Mr. Beast, Mark Rober, Alex Stepp, they've been using the same format for years. They just become a master of it. Just think about it, if, like, Steven Spielberg, every time he made a movie, he created a new script structure and didn't stick to the 3 act structure, he wouldn't be world class at what he does. So I think that the first place is really do the research, identify a format that you feel, um, connects with the way that you wanna tell stories, understand what is the difference between people using it successfully and unsuccessfully to inform the way that you go about executing. And when it's not successful, don't give up on it. What I would recommend is take that reference, put it on one side of the screen, put yours on the other side of the screen, and play it side by side and see what was the difference. And I'm not talking about the subject matter, I'm talking about the way you're telling those stories, the pacing, the tonality, the edits, the music, the background, and be really honest with yourself. So I think that that's a first place to start. Another big mistake that people do is they get so focused on their own internal data, they'll use like a Hootsuite or Sprout Social. They get so caught up in their own metrics. And you need to look at the larger ecosystem of what's going on. Because if you're looking at your own metrics and you're averaging like 10,000 views a video, how are your own metrics going to tell you how to break through to get a million views a video? They're not. And even if you do get it to a million views a video, do you really understand what drove that performance? So again, a big thing is to really start out, um, study the landscape, identify a format, really dive into those qualified nuances that make that format tick and stick with it until you become world class at it.
I love that. I think that's sticking to first principles rather than like jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing. And I think that's what most businesses that I see is it's like a sound has become really popular or a certain formats become popular and they're like, let's just do that. And so even some of our own businesses, I see that kind of almost seems like multiple personality disorder in an organic page of like jumping from thing to thing to thing. And like you said, yeah, Mark Rober's been doing those videos for how long? And they're I mean, he's still in that kind of same structure of I'm making a scientific kind of hypothesis, and then I'm going to use the scientific method to prove it. But it's just very entertaining, and like you said, he's become a master of it. Same with all those guys and girls who are just killing it. So I love that. I think that's such great
And
feedback
people
for
people
a
people
brand.
think that choosing a format and sticking with it limits creativity, but it doesn't. Like you look at Mr. Beast or Mark Rober or Alex Stemp, there's so many different stories. And again, going back to film, is that same 3 act structure is been used to make so many different amazing movies that feel completely different. Because when you're watching a movie, unless you've been trained in script writing and things, you're not saying, "Oh, that's the inciting incident. That's plot point 1, that's plot point 2, plot point 3." And even if it is, it's the storyteller's probably not doing a great job. So you don't even know. Most people, 99% of people, when they sit down in front of a movie, they don't know that it's the same structure that's being used over and over again. Yet these stories feel so unique and different, and engaging.
That's such great advice. Well, um, one of the things I usually ask and would love to kind of hear your perspective. Uh, when you, well, one of the things I want to ask you first, how, when you were, I mean, 2005 is completely different worlds. Uh, I don't think people were, now people are jumping into social media because it's like, well, there's so much money to be made. This has now been proven. That was not the case in '05. I mean, '05, it was like, I even feel like 2015, people were still kind of like poo pooing social media. Why are you spending money there? It'll never overtake TV. It'll never overtake the traditional channels. What sparked you in '05 to be like, I'm in, I want to do this and make this amazing career out of it? What was the thing that drove you?
Well, I was working for a movie studio at a time, and I realized that every time we finished a film, and keep this in mind, a single piece of content is a film that we would invest tens of millions of dollars, if not more, in. So there would be a sense of anxiety and stress over the studio office when we finished a film, because now we need hundreds of millions of people around the world to know about this single piece of content in months. We didn't have years or decades to build a brand. Now you can look at Marvel and Star Wars, that's different. But most movies aren't like that. Um, and I just kind of looked at social and just digital in general, and I just saw, I did the first influencer campaign on YouTube. This was like 2006, 2007, and my philosophy was there's these creators, they weren't even called influencers at the time, that are reaching millions of people and they're so engaged. Why don't I just reach out to them and say, "Do you want to interview a movie star?" Because nobody was doing it, and I just saw the opportunity that, like, these people have this audience, why don't we tap into it? So I saw it really as kind of like a means to an ends of, like, achieving this goal at a much more cost efficient rate and sometimes free compared to what we were paying on television, print, and radio. Now, when I first started in social, did I have any inclination of what it would be today? No. I just thought it was really cool and interesting and effective way to reach a lot of people around the world in a short period of time. And I just did it more and more and more. And because there was no like experts at the time, because it was such a new medium, I became kind of that conduit between social media and the movie studios, and then directors, producers, and actors. And then it started extending to technology I would build on top of it and things of that nature. So it just kind of interested me, and I wanted to figure out what it was and how it worked. Um, and then I just kept going with it because it just kept evolving and there was new opportunities and things of that nature.